Coming up on Network Africa, Gambia's president-elect Adama Barrow says he will be sworn in as president at the Gambian embassy in the Senegalese capital, Dakar. Sporadic gunfire continues in the port city of San Pedro in Côte d'Ivoire. The UN warns of famine risk in Somalia amid worsening drought. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Temito Kwefagbeni. The Gambia's president-elect Adama Barrow says he will be sworn in as president of the country in the Gambian embassy in the Senegalese capital Dakar today. But reports coming in from there says the embassy is short with no guards or staff. Earlier reports have suggested that it would be inaugurated at a location in the Gambia. This follows the failure of last-ditch negotiations to persuade President Yahya Jammeh to step down. West African military forces are, however, on standby to enforce a transfer of power.
In a bid to find a solution to the Gambian political crisis, Mauritanian President Mohamed Abdelaziz has flown to Senegal to meet with President Macky Sall. President Aziz left Gambia shortly before midnight when Gambian leader Yahya Jammeh's presidential mandate expired. Meanwhile, diplomatic sources say President-elect Adama Barrow, who is currently in Senegal, can take the presidential oath anywhere on Gambian soil or in one of Gambia's embassies. Adama Barrow's spokesman Alifa Saleh says that Barrow's team is in Senegal and are preparing the inauguration and that no one could stop him from being sworn in.
They have an alternative means of developing their own inauguration committee, and they are working on their own inauguration. President-elect Barrow is the executive. Nobody else has executive power. He has said that his right to be elected and his right to assume office will not be abrogated by any force on this earth. That is very clear.
Senegalese forces have taken strategic positions in the Gambian capital, Banjul. Meanwhile, British tourists who have been evacuated from Gambia arrived at the UK Manchester airport early on Thursday morning. Holidaymaker Arlen Harper described the atmosphere in the country before his trip was cut short.
We went out on Wednesday night to a Chinese, and we got there and they said, oh, we're closing within the hour. So we had to have our main course and get straight out, and all the Gambian people who worked at the Chinese were coming straight out because they were frightened to death. They were all hurrying home.
They said it was closing, it was going to be closed after.
Senegal, with the backing from leaders in the region, has threatened to invade Gambia to depose Jammeh if he does not immediately hand over power to challenger Adama Barrow, who beat him in the election in early December.
Meanwhile, a non-governmental organization, Save the Children, has warned of a possible humanitarian emergency on both sides of the border between the Gambia and Senegal if the political crisis in the Gambia results in an outbreak of violence. It quotes the United Nations as saying that up to 50,000 people, mostly women and children, have already left urban centers in the Gambia, with about half heading to villages in other parts of the country and half crossing the border into Senegal. Health facilities in the Gambia are still operating, but the majority of foreign doctors have left the country. Many schools remain closed, and some that are open are advising their parents to keep their children at home. Meanwhile, the Gambia's Vice President, Isatu Nje Saidi, alongside the Environment and Higher Education Ministers, have resigned. Also resigning is Yahya Jammeh's lawyer, who has fled to Senegal after writing a letter to the defeated president, urging him to give up power. Now, joining us to speak more on this issue is the VOA's Katarina Hoije, who joins us from the Gambian capital, Banjul. Thank you for joining us on the program, Katarina.
Thank you.
So what is the latest on the political crisis in the Gambia?
Well, as you already mentioned, the winner of the December presidential election, Adama Barrow, is set to be sworn in at the Gambian embassy at Dakar at 4 p.m. local time. So in 1 hour, Meanwhile, former President Yahya Jammeh remains in the presidential palace in Bangui. He has not made any statements since last night when his mandate officially ended. And the question is what he will do around 4 p.m. when Barrow is supposed to be sworn in Dakar.
So how is the government reacting to news that Adama Barrow will be sworn in Senegal? What happens if the swearing-in actually holds?
Well, so far there has been no reaction for the government, which means that people here are left a bit unknowing while the world is watching Banjul. The population in the capital doesn't know what's going on. Banjul and parts of the towns, Senegal and Gambia, have turned into practical ghost towns. There are very few people in the streets. All shops are closed. Gas stations have closed as well, which means it's difficult to get fuel. And people have decided to stay at home, afraid of what will happen today and in the coming days. No one knows if Jammeh will continue to try and stay in power, and if this might lead to a conflict or some sort of protest or show of force from either the Gambian soldiers or the Senegalese forces that have gathered along the border with Gambia and Senegal.
Now, Katerina, I said, how is the government reacting to the news that Adama Barrow will be sworn in Senegal?
The government has so far not reacted at all. There were expectations that Yahya Jammeh would make a statement at midnight when his mandate officially ended. The president has reacted with silence. There has been no official statement. The armed forces have spoken up and said that they will respect the constitution, which would mean that they would respect Adama Barrow as the sworn-in president after the ceremony in Dakar. He would then become the president and the fourth commander. But again, so far no reaction from the government.
Katerina, thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa. Still on the Gambian crisis, China has urged the embattled president Yahya Jammeh to find a peaceful way to resolve the political crisis rocking the country. The Foreign Ministry spokesman Hua Chenyang says, quote, "We urge relevant parties to stay cool-headed, to attach importance to the interest of the people and country, to appropriately resolve the political crisis through dialogue and political consultation, and to maintain peace and stability," end of quote. China has a growing diplomatic and business presence in Africa and has been deeply involved in efforts to bring peace to South Sudan. China resumed diplomatic ties with the Gambia in March last year. Well, let's get more on the crisis in the Gambia as a senior lecturer of political science at the Lagos State University, Dr. Wale Adiremi, joins us live on the program. You're welcome to the program, Dr. Adiremi.
Pleasure.
Now, is it legal for the president-elect Adama Barrow to be sworn in Senegal? Will he be able to return home to rule in the Gambia?
Say that again.
I said, is it legal for the president-elect Adama Barrow to be sworn in Senegal? Will he be able to return home to the Gambia to rule as president?
Well, I mean, the bit I've read about him, he's a real estate developer. He's sort of going on into the politics of the Gambia. But what is impressive about his profile is he was able to come down, I think, from the UK to give a form of cohesion to the Gambian opposition and to lead them to the historic victory. And I think being sworn in, I expect him to at least launch Gambia into a proper democratic transition.
Dr. Adiremi, my question is, if he's sworn in Senegal, how easy will it be for him to come home to the Gambia to rule as president?
Oh, yeah, I think pretty easy. I mean, if you look at the scenario now, Gambia is totally surrounded by ECOWAS, troops from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Senegal. So it's going to be under protection of the Senegalese military. So I expect that they will usher him, under very protection. That will be an overthrow for the Gambian army, into Gambia, and they will give him, sufficient military backing to take over in Gambia.
Now, aid agencies are already warning that there will be a humanitarian crisis in the Gambia if ECOWAS forces intervene. Now, do you think ECOWAS should wait until after the state of emergency that was imposed by President Jammeh before taking any action, or should they act immediately?
Well, the ECOMOS, I mean, we are all hoping, that the ECOMOS intervention will be a last resort. And there's actually breaking news, that President Yahya Jammeh has agreed to step down. But if he hasn't stepped down, then I will, expect the ECOWAS, to use minimum intervention to force him out. It is absolutely necessary, given the antecedents of President Yahya Jammeh. But fortunately, I'm hearing from other media that President Yahya Jammeh has agreed to step down. So that may be redundant argument, actually.
So finally, Dr. Aderemi, what is the role of the African Union in all of this crisis?
Well, for once, I think, we've had a very cohesive, front presented by both the African Union and the ECOWAS and even the United Nations. Everybody's agreed, that the continuation of the Jammeh administration is unacceptable. Everybody has put their money where their mouth, has been, that Jammeh should be forced out and Adamacha, Barrow, installed. So I think this is one of the instances in African politics where you have all these regional organizations coming to terms, agreeing, saying face to face, and acting in concert to do the proper thing.
Dr. Wale Aderemi, thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa.